we never planned this stuff. It just all kind of flows out.
Yeah, that worked out really well.
What we say to each other cannot be divisive.
Gosh, I just think that when we get so focused on walking the line and just miss so much of God's creativity.
We only created the Odd Show to have this conversation.
Right.
We're gonna say some bad things about stuff. If you're
Not bad things like,
if you're a huge Toby Mac fan,
turn it off now.
Or for people who are struggling with why would a God of the universe care about me individually? You are his favorite. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is The Odd Show. Let's get right into it. Here's your hosts, Bruce Bugano and Thomas Hogan.
Hey, welcome to The Odd Show. We're back. It's been like, how long has it been?
The G isn't silent. This show is silent.
No joke. Man, when we take time off, we take time off.
Yeah.
We take
Radical
so much time
sabbatical.
off. We take so much time off that you think we're not coming back. Or hope we're not.
YouTube finally got us.
Yeah, we're back. It's been like a month and a half, maybe-ish.
I feel like it's been a while.
Beginning of December probably is, and then the holidays hit, and you had some stuff going on, moving stuff. Like I was sick. I don't know, like my whole family was sick.
Oh, my mustache is throwing off the Wi-Fi signal.
So his wife isn't currently there, so he thinks that he can do whatever he wants.
Mustache-wise.
Yeah, mustache-wise. Anyway, so we got that. Thomas's mustache. Welcome to Thomas's mustache. What do we got going on? We ain't got anything going on, I don't think. Actually, I do want to say this. The topic that we're going to talk about may make some people mad. It can make people as mad as one of our last episodes, which was about Perry Noble. So that episode upset some people. Actually, one of the comments was a couple of armchair quarterbacks trash talking or questioning one of God's vessels. This smacks of jealousy. And I was just like, what? Like,
I don't think they've watched any of the other shows. Jealous of people. We're going the opposite direction.
Yeah, I was just like, I don't know. Like, obviously, you didn't watch this episode or any sure what we're jealous of, like that he's going through, because he's going through a really hard time.
I'm jealous too much in my marriage falling apart. I'm not jealous of that.
I don't know. So,
I'm praying for that. I'm praying for God to be God in that situation.
Figured that we talk about was the Golden Globes.
The Golden Girls.
Say Golden Girls. Betty White. Betty White will fix everything. Anyway, the Golden Globes were last night. The other night. So we're recording this the couple of nights after. So it's been about a week. But during the Golden Globes, Oprah received an award and gave this speech. And during the
link in
speech,
the show notes.
Huh?
Link in the show notes.
Yep. But during that speech, she referenced a couple of different hashtag movements that are currently going on. One of them I was familiar with is the Me Too, hashtag Me Too. And that was huge. And if you're not familiar with hashtag Me Too, who are you? And where have you been? I don't know what's going on. But it has to do with women and some men speaking out against sharing their stories around being sexually assaulted and raped. And it's a movement that kind of centers around strength, like grabbing back strength and saying, no more. We're not going to be silent anymore. The second movement was hashtag Time's Up, and I wasn't really familiar with it until my wife posted something on that today, kind of referencing that speech and the hashtag movement. But I guess hashtag Time's Up kind of revolves around this idea that will we allow tyrant men to kind of just run rampant and do whatever they and taking advantage of women and kind of being this oppressive force. So basically they're saying time's up, like your time is up, we're done with it. Are you there, Thomas?
I'm here, but my video's not.
Okay, that's okay as long as you got audio.
People don't need to see this mustache.
No, people don't want to see this mustache is what you meant to say. Anyway, the Time's Up hashtag, my wife had mentioned something like, hey, why are Christian guys not leading this charge? Why are Christian guys not the ones saying, you're right, time is up, and we're going to recognize they're going to stop seeking to press down. So about this all the time. Thomas and I have talked about it. We've kind of hinted around and joked around things like women in leadership. We've done some episodes on I want to take a harder stance on this. So I really do have I think it would be irresponsible to, like the Bible does, and not just the Bible, but Jesus okay with kind of the way that we've created culture around women in general, but especially within the church. So, Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, so much stuff to unpack, man. Women are not treated fairly by men in many occasions. The church is no exception. And in some cases, the church is the fault. I don't think in every case. I don't really know. I can't speak for all of Christian men. You know what I mean? Like I can't even speak for all of church world, which is, you know, a separate thing.
Right.
I can speak to them though, and so in saying that, right. The oppression of women, and the repression of women, and the mishandling and misunderstanding of the Word of God to execute our feelings and our I don't say use, our interaction with women has been off. But I would say more it's a society thing and a church thing. And so as Christian men, we have to not tolerate that. But I can only not tolerate it in the sense that I speak to other Christian men. The systemic part of it is a deep-rooted church thing, that right. Women are allowed in leadership. We talked a little bit about that in the pre-show, that women are not seen as equal partners to the grace of God and the gospel, where if that exists in any way, and whether you want to call it complementarianism or you want to call it separate but equal, which is a very horrible way to say anything, you're gonna have to backtrack. You're gonna have to. I mean, we're just getting to the point in where society and the church are kind of at that tipping point of you can't act like this, or you can't treat things this way anymore. So I'm with you on that, and definitely with your wife saying that. Where are the Christian men? I mean, the Christian men I know don't. Well, I can't say across the board. For the most part, do not belittle their wives. Do not put down their wives or think lesser of their wives than other Christian leaders or Christian influencers. And I think I make a concerted effort, and I would hope that most of the people I know, or at least interact with on a daily basis, make a concerted effort. You know, in the military, you were in the military. I'm still in the military.
Yep.
There's just kind of a zero tolerance for that. I mean, people might joke about it on even today is on a rare occasion, but you know, I have women bosses, many women bosses. and people far above me that outrank me, and gender is not exclusionary or something to be. Uh, it's not a less than thing, you know. So I would hope that we stand up, say that that's wrong. I don't. As far as hashtag stuff, I don't know about like. I look at it. There's a difference between treating women with respect and giving them honor where they're due, and then moving into like the hashtag world where I don't get involved with things a whole lot, just
Right.
because. Just because, I mean, I get the idea of a movement that says women are equal to men in the honor and respect they deserve, and should not be put in a place where they feel less than or uh, slighted or taken advantage of at the worst, right? So women shouldn't be in that position, and as Christian men, we should do everything we can to honor and venerate and see them as these co-heirs, co-heirs, not heirs. I have no hair. Co-heirs with Christ, as the Bible says. And so I don't really, yeah, that's bad. I look down on that. I think that an old way of church, but it's an old way of society. I don't,
Right.
as far as right. It's not. I don't think that's necessarily a church thing. The church enables it in some senses, and but that's also dying out. Just like racism, it's not that racism doesn't exist. It exists plenty, but it's it's dying out. Like it's in the death throes. It doesn't have, this whole Harvey Weinstein thing. I think did we talk about Harvey Weinstein? Did that happen the last? Okay, I think we were talking about something else. But this whole Harvey Weinstein thing, but beyond that, Hollywood in general has been a cesspool of people taking advantage of other people. It is a power driven model, right, across the board. And that now, I mean, it's just beginning. I don't think we've seen anywhere near the tip of the iceberg of all the stuff that's going to go down, but I'm all for it. I think it's great. Like, we should have been calling these people out years and years ago. If we saw it, and I say we, as a society, if we saw it and knew about it, we should have done something about it long before now. And so I'm all for. It's time to put that stuff behind us. We've got to, and on a more
Right.
serious level. I mean, not serious, but on a more personal level, there is too much to do for the sake of the gospel to discount anybody's influence or uh, action, right? I
Right.
need men, women, young, old, white, black, poor, rich, English speaking, non-English. I need as many people as possible actively engaging their neighbors, their communities, their places of work, for the sake of the gospel. And I can't get to that if we're treating some people like their voice doesn't matter as much, or their opinion or perspective is invalid because of their gender or background or whatever, right? So on a very meaningful level, I need women to actively be the mouthpieces that God created them to be the ministers and the evangelists and the passionate caretakers and shepherds and whatever God created, put inside of individual people. That's what I need them to be. That's what the church and the people of God and the world that's desperate for love and hope. I need that, right? So I can't. I'm not in a place where I can say, well, what you have to offer isn't as good as other people. So I don't want. I don't. I think you should sit down and be quiet, right?
Right.
I don't have the room for that. Not today. Maybe
And-
we could have made that up, like 1,000 years ago, but the whole world is interconnected, right? The whole world. Everybody's voice is kind of there, and I need more and more people saying Jesus is the way. The gospel is our only hope. Like, I need as
Right.
many people to say that with influence and passion as possible, and not for, and then anybody who says anything against those people, that's who I'm going to tell to get out of the way.
Right. And I think Sarah was kind of is um, not that. How do we like? society issue. Like, this is a society issue. And if we're going to stand up and speak to any issues in society, why is one of them not like? Why is one of them not how society has treated women, and instead, in the church historically, it's been okay to treat women that way. You know, I mean, like, heck, man, there's of history within the church where it's been used to press down and oppress women in people's own individual home.
Mm-hmm.
I think her point was, and does and the gospel not undo that in us as a church and society saying, hey, this is that, like, there is no silence here, like, the way that you treat women, and I realize, like, some of that is takes time, and but historically it hasn't. So you were talking about how systemically it needs to be on an individual level, and we can't change it systemically. So kind of going to the race thing, just kind of using that as an example. About 5 months ago, before school, back in August, friends were kind of having a little get together. One of my friends, he's actually Jamaican, so we were having this conversation, and he was trying to get the point across to me that, like, I think it was right after, but trying to get me to understand the point that I need you to tell, where, like, the hillbilly hates black people, them they're wrong, or until they change their mind, telling them on an individual level. And I was trying to argue, in my head it made sense, that if the systemic thing, work towards getting laws changed, it forces him, like, I can't change his morality, and it forces him to act a certain way. And oh man, like, you have to change it on an individual level. And I was like, but a few weeks ago, probably about a month and a half ago, I was listening to Propaganda's new awesome album.
Big shout out to Propaganda.
Songs in there, he makes this point. He was just like, but he makes that point where the gospel was not made to change systems; it was made to change individual hearts, and it's those hearts that I need changed. And I was just like, man, maybe, like, that's what I've been saying about abortion. Like, for years, I've been saying we can't legislate morality. Like, we have to get into the hearts of people on this abortion issue to where they understand the sanctity of life, and it becomes a heart change. Why is that not the same when we talk about systemic racism? Like, we need to get into the hearts of people, and I'm totally the other way now. Like, don't stop trying to change the system, but at the same time, it's a both and thing where the gospel needs to penetrate. Like, we need to get into the hearts of people, and at a very heart level, change their view, and that's what changes the system eventually, on a grander scale. And it's the same with this woman thing. Like, we need to change hearts on an individual level, and systemically that will create a culture shift. So that's kind of the, like, I agree with you on that point. That's a long way of saying I agree with you on that point, that we can't speak to the system, but we can speak to individuals, and it's individuals that will change that culture. But within the church, like, it frustrates me that this is even a conversation that we still have to have inside the church. Yeah. Especially when you get into, like, Ephesians 5:20. Sarah makes the point in her post where she's just like, what? Because we as men have taken little numbers and separated out chapter and verse in the Bible, and we decided that there needed to be a space between Ephesians 5:20 and 5:21. and submit yourselves one to another, and then husbands love your wives and wives submit to your husbands. Like, it's not; those are not separate in the way that the letter was written. But we've decided to separate it, and when we start talking about how husbands and wives should treat each other, we go right to 521 and skip 520 because that's not talking about husbands and wives. That's talking about the body in general.
So I just want to interject. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I haven't, I go to a bunch of different churches. You guys go to kind of one specific church, but I go to, several different churches, and I have not I can't even think in the last 10 years maybe, that I've heard somebody say submit to your wife without saying love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave for her. Now, I've heard.
No. I'm not saying that that's not
haven't.
preached that way. I'm not saying that that's not preached that way. But when it comes to the idea of submission, it generally is accepted, or has been historically, that submission is a wife's act more than it is a husband's act, because a wife loves their wife, or a husband loves their wife, and a wife submits to their husband, and that has been used to abuse. Like, that has been taken so far out of context for such a long time in so many areas, that has been used as a form of abuse, to launch abuse. And I'm not saying that churches nowadays, but we have both been a part of many churches that are like, nope, women will not teach men. Like, that is just not the way to, what I'm saying?
So
like,
I'm with you. I'm with you and with your wife on this. If a church is not, well, already, you know how I feel about this whole situation. The thing that happens on Sunday is an organization. It's a missional, evangelistic organization. It's a ministry. And that ministry has bylaws and rules and kind of a standard of practice, right? That this is how they do things. And if that ministry, that church building and the functions that happen within it have decided that women are relegated to a lesser position, or a position where they aren't actively presenting and teaching and, I don't want to say pastoring, but shepherding the gospel for others, I would say that is a bad ministry, but not the church. And the church, in my opinion, is these bodies of believers, right? These believers, where I sit down with another Christian couple or 3 or 4 other Christian couples, and we work through what life is for and what God's doing in our lives, and we pray for each other. And in that setting, women have a strong voice. Women have a meaningful, purposeful voice. And a lot of times, I mean, when I was in doing home church or house church, the women had a far superior connection to the schedule and how things worked than the men did. I mean, some of the men were myself included, a little aloof in in that setting, because women were so good at organization in that setting. And so they were leaders, even if we didn't call them leaders, because their gifts were present and clear. And I feel like we miss that. This is a whole other discussion about what church is and what church isn't. But when you go into that Sunday morning setting, you're already delegating all of the authority and all of the vision to one person in the front of the room. And that's typically a man. Not always, but typically 90% across the board, I would say, is a man. And you're losing the opportunity and the ability of each and every individual to bring their gift to the center and allow Christ to use it to display the gospel. And so I'm all for it. Like, we should be calling those things out as poor examples of ministry moving forward.
And my thing is like, I'm okay when Apple or Google or Intuit or whoever comes up with their policies, which like their standards and practices and policies, and I'm okay when they do that. However, what I'm not okay with is when these organizations that we call church take the same text that we're all supposed to be using to set boundaries and guidelines for how we approach God and how we understand God and how we interact with each other and teach each other and go into the world. Like when we're using the same text, my problem is, and you're right, those are bad ministries. And my problem is with that, like your Apple is not using the same text to come up with whatever policies they are that I'm trying to say, yeah, but that's not what it says. And these professional organizations that are churches are saying, no, you're wrong. You're misinterpreting because I went to whatever theological seminary and you didn't. Even though you've been reading the text and been doing life with people for the last 20 years, and the word of God is spoken through God's people, and interpretation and theology and doctrine and dogma all comes from revelation of the Holy Spirit through God's people, and you work that out, and whatever. Not good enough because you didn't go to, and even in that, like I've had people tell me like, yes, and you went to Liberty Theological Seminary, like mine's better, like what I'm saying, like not in so many words. And I was just like, yeah, but
Right.
Falwell, Jerry Falwell Jr. Like he's Trump's man, so who's better now?
Well, I mean, I would make the argument. I mean, I would just go back to the Bible and be like, I don't know what advanced degrees that the disciples had,
Right.
but they were commissioned by Jesus to go in. I don't know how learned fishermen are. I don't know how much. I mean,
out of all of them, Paul was probably the smartest.
I don't know how much peer-reviewed fishing you have to do to be good at. But I think that it's a silly argument. I think that the church world's going to get its comeuppance, just like when I say church world, I mean the organized Sunday morning fiasco or matinee or whatever it is called, whatever people are calling it, the matinee. That they're gonna, the comeuppance is coming, right? And I think that the church is going to have to grapple with over the next, I would say, 5 to 10 years about its blatant misogyny. Now, I don't think that's every church. I think that there are a lot of churches that have. And I think there are a ton of churches that have stepped ahead. One of the churches I go to, one of the guys I consider a really close mentor of mine, Rob, with the church that you came to whenever you came here, the first guy, Rob, he is out in front of this all the time, and then without any prompts from Hollywood, which to me, that's the sadder part, that Hollywood, that are so not that everyone in Hollywood is part of a cesspool, but that anytime we follow Hollywood,
you got people like Tom Hanks, and Tom Hanks is classy.
Classy guy. No, I'm saying anytime we're taking our cues of what direction we should go from people who kind of live and thrive off of the exploitation of people.
Would you say that that's not a good model for a presidency either?
I would say that's not a good model for a society. It's not a good. It's not a good model for civil activism, civil activity. I don't know. I think it's not. So we shouldn't be following that train. They should be following the train that average women in the workplace, women leading their homes well, women out in college or in whatever environment they're in, saying, I've had enough, I'm not going to be treated this way, and then their fathers and their brothers and their best friends and their co-workers standing behind them and saying, you're right, you shouldn't be treated this way, this is unacceptable behavior, and we're not going to tolerate it here. Like, that should happen. I'm all for that. I think Hollywood, I don't want to say it's hypocritical. I think that Hollywood is behind, actually, where the rest of the country is. And it just happens to be that major people in Hollywood have gotten in trouble in the last 6 to 8 months or whatever, and it's kind of come to light that this is but I don't know anyone who didn't suspect that happening already.
Right. Well, I mean, we were already talking about the rape culture on college campuses for the last 10 years, right? I mean,
And I'm not going to say we've destroyed any semblance of rape.
Right.
I'm going to say rape, but sexual deviancy in college campuses. I don't think that's the case. However, I think that it has been a societal attention, or it has been at the level of societal attention for a while, and it just happened. And I think a lot of people in Hollywood, and I would say Hollywood, but I would say media in general, right? So media, that's talking news,
Right.
Hollywood, presentation, like people in the media and Hollywood have pretended to be above it when just under the surface there was like extreme deviancy and extreme abuse of power that if they talked about it would the cards would fall, right?
Right. The house of cards would fall. Oh.
Right. And and I think that it's interesting now. I think our society is at a place where we're turning that corner and saying, okay, we're not going to go this direction anymore.
And my wife's point is, why is the church not why are men in the church not, and just kind of in general, not that there's
Right.
not men in the church leading that charge or that care about that. But why is the church not leading that charge? And worse than that, why have they settled to be okay with it? And some of them have propagated it for such a long time. And that's her point, is like,
Yeah. No, I think the church should be better. I agree. I'm with your wife. But when I say the church, I mean that's the problem. Whenever you associate yourself with something that's 2 billion people in the whole world, or a billion, I don't know, whatever the number is, and then in that billion number, you're associated with a group of people that are 400 people, where they have all their own ideas and all their own, and then try to guide that in a socially conscious way. I think it's not silly to think that can be done, but that's not the way it works.
Right.
I think on an individual level, in the body of believers that you know and interact with, if you saw yourself as the church every time you were doing something, you might look at things differently. But instead, this disassociation with, well, I